Welcome into Southeastern 16. It is postseason grade time. Yes, I'm about to give you my grades for all 16 SEC football teams as we have now reached the postseason of college football. Yes, while the SEC is not played in a few weeks, no SEC teams in the national championship. Football season is officially over, so I've took some time to grade each team. So we're going to jump right into it. All 16 SEC teams. Drop a comment below on what you feel about your team, how you would grade your favorite team. But we'll start. We're going to go alphabetical order here. So no, in how I chose these teams, it's just alphabetical order. I'll put that out up front. All right, so here we go. The Alabama Crimson Tide will be our first team. Obviously starting with an A. I give Alabama B minus after the season. Now, I thought about a C, but I went B minus. I thought they had some good wins. Obviously, the win over Georgia was huge, but when their back was against the wall, they couldn't win against Oklahoma. Didn't finish the season great with a loss to Michigan in the bowl game. So inconsistencies, penalties, dropping one to Vandy, dropping one to Oklahoma, Tennessee game. That was a good game to a playoff team. So I settled on B minus, but again, I seriously considered a C for this year's Alabama team. Obviously, I think this is a team that's going to win some games next year. Kalen DeBoer is going to get things figured out. But I went B minus for the Crimson Tide in year one under Kalen DeBoer. For the Arkansas Razorbacks, I also went B minus for the Hogs. Now they finished their season with a 7-6 record, 3-5 in conference play. I thought the offense looks better. Bobby Petrino obviously leading the charge there. Taylon Green good at quarterback. They got that win over Tennessee, but then you look at some of their other losses and you're thinking, well, you beat a team like Tennessee. They couldn't put it together against like that LSU game. I thought they could have come out and played better. They did get the win of the bowl game. I thought was good for Sam Pittman, but overall, I went B minus for Arkansas, as well for the Hogs this year. I think they could look better next year as well with Taylon Green hanging around, Bobby Petrino hanging around as OC. So, yeah, I went B minus for the Hogs this year. They've got some room for some improvement though. All right, next up, the Auburn Tigers. I'm gonna have to go with D for Auburn. 2-6 in the SEC, 5-7 overall. Very inconsistent was the Tigers once again this year. Couldn't really find a rhythm. Really not a great start to the season. Was plagued by turnovers. They won 3 of their last 5 games. Quarterback play was not great. They didn't utilize their fantastic running back like they could and should have. I feel like just a lackluster year for Auburn, and it showed in the record. They were in some games, they led some games, they gave some games up. They just couldn't finish in a lot of different situations, which is a very tough spot to be in. And so it's how I settled on D for the Auburn Tigers. Again, they were able to get that win over Texas A&M in the second to last week of the season, which I feel like was gave them a little spark, a little momentum. Didn't get to a bowl game, obviously. Another 5-7 year for Auburn. It's not going to sit well down on the plains if that keeps going. But I landed on D for the Auburn Tigers. For the Florida Gators, 4-4 conference play, 8-5 overall. Look, I went with B for the Gators. And I went with B. Look, they beat 3 pretty solid programs in their last 4 games. They beat LSU. They beat Ole Miss. And they look in the bowl game, you may think, well, they beat them 33-8. They must not be any good. Tulane is a solid group of 5 program, and they beat them 33-8. And so you look at the schedule of what Florida had, and we talked about it tons in the offseason, really tough, brutal schedule. And I thought Florida handled it well, especially down the stretch. And down the stretch is when you usually see teams give up and move on and pack it in and get ready for the draft or whatever's next for these players. Florida didn't do that. They never gave up one time this season. While it wasn't a great start to the season, I feel like middle of the year and down the stretch, Florida proved themselves and proved that Billy Napier can stay at Florida, can win games at Florida. He's recruiting well. And so I landed on a B for the Florida Gators. I thought they had some really good wins, especially, again, those wins down the stretch against LSU and Ole Miss. And they beat a team like Ole Miss whose back was against the wall and trying to get into the playoff. And Florida ruined that for the Ole Miss Rebels. And so good season for the Florida Gators as they'll look to build on that. Next up, the Georgia Bulldogs. Look, I landed on an A for Georgia. They were a college football playoff team. They were the conference champion for the SEC. And look, I think, we can talk about what ifs all day long, but, this was you have to play your backup quarterback in the college football playoff quarterfinal game. You lose to Notre Dame. What if Carson Beck had been in there? Who knows? Again, we're not going to play the what if game, but this was a good Georgia team this year. And while they did drop a couple of games, look, they proved that they can bounce back from those. They bounced back from that tough loss in Tuscaloosa, which they fought and clawed their way back into. They bounced back well after that loss to Ole Miss. They won the SEC. This was a hungry Georgia team, a good Georgia team. And while inconsistent at times, Carson Beck wasn't as sharp as we've seen in years past. I still think they're worthy of an A. And so I'll slap that A on the paper of the Georgia Bulldogs this year. Next up, the Kentucky Wildcats. I went with D. They were 1-7 in the league, 4-8 overall. Disappointing season for the Kentucky Wildcats, which is bizarre because we think back to the way they played Georgia. And it was a tight game. Georgia won it there towards the end. Kentucky then beats Ole Miss. We're thinking, okay, here we go. This is a Kentucky team that really good defense. They're finding something on offense, and the wheels fell off. And it was a tough road the rest of the way out. The only reason I feel like they are a D is because they did get that win over Ole Miss. I thought they played some people well at times. Just a tough way for Kentucky this year. And they did get a conference win though against a good Ole Miss team, so that definitely helped the case there for Kentucky. Next up, the LSU Tigers. They were 5-3 in the conference, 9-4 overall. I landed on a C for the LSU Tigers, and look, they lost the season opener again. They had a stretch of 3 games that they lost. They did have good wins over Oklahoma, over Vandy. I thought their defense was tons better than it was the previous year. Garrett Nussmeier had their offense looking good. This was a team they couldn't play from behind, and that was a struggle. And Garrett Nussmeier trying to play from behind caused a lot of turnovers and things like that. And so they didn't quite have the season I feel like we thought maybe mid-year they were going to have when they were on a bit of a roll. Again, they dropped 3 straight games, and our thoughts became a little different about the LSU Tigers. So I landed on a C there for Brian Kelly and the LSU Tigers. Next up, the Ole Miss Rebels. Now, this was a team going into the year, very high expectations. Look, we said, okay, Ole Miss is a playoff type team. They've built this roster for this year. Guys coming back that could have gone to the NFL, that could have gone elsewhere. They said, we want to come back to Oxford, Mississippi, and play for a college football playoff national championship. It was championship or bust for the Ole Miss Rebels this year. And I mean, they finished 10-3. That's a good season for Ole Miss. A 10-win season, 5-3 in the conference. But again, down the stretch when their back was against the wall, and I said this so many times in our content here on the channel throughout the season, when they have to win, similar to Alabama, what I said earlier, when they're in a position where they've got to win to get in the college football playoff, they can't do it. They lose that game in the swamp to Florida. And you're thinking, okay, if a team that competes for championships would find a way to win these games down the stretch when they have to, when their back's against the wall, and Ole Miss couldn't do it. And again, a great season, 10-win season. I like Lane Kiffin and what he's got going there at Ole Miss. Great roster. Defense was really good this year, but they couldn't win the games when they really needed to the most. They dropped that one to Kentucky, earlier in the season. They lost that one at Florida, and so I went B- for Ole Miss as well. They underperformed at times, and they couldn't get where they most definitely could have gone, and that was to a national championship. And they were sitting at home when the college football playoff rolled around. So I went B- for the Ole Miss Rebels. Mississippi State gets an F. They were 0-8 in the SEC, 2-10 overall. Look, all you can go is up, and I think they will. It was year number 1 for Jeff Lebby. They've got some things to figure out. They had the injury to quarterback. Michael Van Buren came in. Look, I thought he did an exceptional job. They, again, did some good things at times, just very inconsistent. Defense was not good. Really couldn't stop anybody. And so Mississippi State, they get the F here in our postseason grades. Next up, the Tigers of Missouri. So they finished the year 5-3, 10-3. I went B for Missouri. I probably should have gone B+ with Missouri. Probably should have gone B+. They also, we talked about Ole Miss, Alabama. They all had aspirations to be in the college football playoff. Missouri did as well. They were I think they're top 15 team going into the year this year. And the blowout loss to A&M hurt. And then you go to Tuscaloosa, you get blown out by Alabama. And you had a Brady Cook injury in there. And just some inconsistencies. I like Brady Cook. I thought he was tremendous this year when he was in. Again, he battled that injury, which was tough for the team. They got the bowl win. I went B. Probably should have gone B+ for the Missouri Tigers, now that I think on it. But it was a good year, 10-win year for Missouri, which is good for Eli Drinkwitz and company there. So, I went B for the Missouri Tigers. The Oklahoma Sooners, I went D for Oklahoma. They were 2-6 in the conference, 6-7 overall. Tough loss there in the bowl game as they fell to Navy there by 1. It's going to be tough for Brent Venables, though. Heading into this year, they got to win. You can't be 2-6 in the SEC. And they struggle with injuries, though. I mean, just left and right guys going out, especially at the beginning of the year. And they started 4-1, then 2-6 the rest of the way, including getting blown out by Texas, South Carolina, LSU. They did get that win over Alabama, though, which was a huge win in Norman on Senior Day for this Oklahoma Sooners team. But not a great start to SEC play for Brent Venables and the Oklahoma Sooners. All right, next up, the South Carolina Gamecocks. Boy, what a season it was in Columbia, South Carolina. And I give South Carolina an A. should have gone A minus. The more I think on it, what they did down the stretch, very impressive. They lost the bowl game, but this team was playing with an edge. They were believing themselves. Lenore Sellers, most improved player in college football, to me this season. What he did running the football, especially in that Clemson game, really impressive. You think back on their season, LSU game, a lot of calls didn't go their way towards the end of that game, and it kind of changed the outcome of it. You think back to the Ole Miss game. They did not play good that day. Boy, they did not play good. You think back to the Alabama game. They turned the ball over a couple of times, put Alabama in a good position there to win that game. And the season could look much different for South Carolina. They were a borderline playoff team. And I thought the job that Shane Beamer's doing right now at South Carolina is just tremendous. But I went A minus, maybe, especially losing the bowl game for South Carolina. But look what they did this year. I loved it. I loved what Shane Beamer and South Carolina did. I love their pass rush, their defense, great this year. Lenore Sellers really improved. Rocket Sanders ran the ball good, especially late in the season when he was healthy. So good year for the Gamecocks. They finished 9-4. Tennessee Vols. Going to go A for the Vols as well. They finished 6-2 in the conference, 10-3 overall, and the college football playoff team is. They got some nice wins this season, but they did get hit late by Ohio State, who obviously eventual national champions. Dylan Sampson had a tremendous year, 1,491 yards rushing. Tennessee's defense spectacular this year, and so it was a great win there for the Tennessee. Or a great year for the Tennessee Vols. Also went with an A for the Texas Longhorns, as they were the deepest SEC team of the season, as they were just a game short of the national championship and lost to the eventual national champions in the Ohio State Buckeyes. But thought it was a great year for Steve Sarkisian in Texas. Couldn't get over the Georgia hump, but losing to them in the regular season and in the SEC championship. But still a great year for the Texas Longhorns. Very deep team, very good defensively as well. And it was good to see Texas playing some SEC ball this year. And the Texas A&M Aggies, I went B for Mike Elko in year one, 5-3. They were 8-5 overall. I thought they did some good things. I thought they played well at times. Other times they struggled. They were just a win short of playing for the SEC championship game. They had a tough schedule. They played some good teams. They lost those games, South Carolina to Texas. And then they lost their bowl game there to USC. But overall, I think it was a good year for the Aggies of A&M. And our last team up, the Vanderbilt Commodores. I went B+ for Vandy. It was a historic year for Vanderbilt football. Obviously, you beat the number one team in the country in Alabama. At the time, they had some other really good wins. They played teams down to the wire. This was a special year. They got the win in the bowl game over Georgia Tech. This Vanderbilt team did things that Vanderbilt is not used to doing, and I think they really set a precedence now for Vanderbilt football moving forward, and really set a good foundation for this program in the new look SEC and the new look college football. So hats off to Vanderbilt. I went B+ for the Commodores after their showing in 2024. So those are my postseason grades for all 16 SEC football teams for the 2024 season. And of course, would love for you to drop your comment and let me know what you would grade your favorite team in the SEC. We'll be kind of recapping 2024, but also looking ahead a lot to 2025 when it comes to SEC football right here on Southeastern 16. So subscribe to our channel if you have not already. Like this video, share it with your friends, spread the word about Southeastern 16 as we deliver you the best SEC football, basketball, baseball content year-round here on Southeastern 16. I'm Chase Robinson covering SEC football.